The morning eye began to become her. The parcel showed up on an overcast Thursday, sliding in almost unnoticed between leaning towers of legal folders and a half-finished cup of espresso going lukewarm on a polished walnut desktop. From across the room, it looked like nothing worth a second glance. Then the lawyer caught sight of the handwriting on the label, and everything inside her chest tightened at once. "Another one of your secret admirers?" the front desk clerk teased, holding out the clipboard with a grin. A practiced smile slid into place, but the fingers gripping the pen trembled just enough to smudge the signature. Behind the floor-to-ceiling glass walls of the corner office, with the downtown skyline stretched out like a postcard, the package was peeled open slowly, almost surgically. Tucked inside was a folded note card inked in looping purple script, handwriting that no amount of years could blur from memory. Refined, patient, unmistakable. The message was only one line long. "Wear these under your suit tomorrow, or every single person at Brennan and Cole Legal hears the story from Reno." Beneath the note card, neatly folded, lay a pair of soft blush silk panties. The office fell into a heavy, ringing quiet. The leather executive chair let out a low creak as its occupant sank backward, eyes locked on the contents of the envelope. Reno, 2 summers earlier. A long weekend that had been carefully buried under late nights, billable hours, promotions, and a meticulously curated reputation. One loose thread. Pull it, and the entire fabric of a career could unravel. A brisk knock against the office door snapped the spiraling thoughts in half. "Everything all right in there?" The desk drawer slammed shut. "All good," came the reply, slightly too fast. "Just buried in the Halloran file." It was a believable lie. Convincing enough. The next morning, in front of the bedroom mirror, dressed in a charcoal 3-piece tailored to within a millimeter of perfection, the decision no longer felt like a decision at all. The silk stayed concealed beneath crisp wool, invisible to every coworker, every client, every passing stranger. And yet every footstep across the hardwood floor served as a tiny, electric reminder. Every breath, every shift of fabric. During the firm's weekly partner briefing, focus was almost impossible to hold on to. "Brilliant job locking down the Sheridan portfolio," the managing partner announced from the head of the table. "We're putting you on point for the Vertex Path merger. Appreciate the trust." The voice came out poised and even. Inside, the scaffolding holding the composure upright was already starting to creak. 3 days later, a second box arrived. This one held a soft lilac blouse trimmed with tiny pearl buttons. The accompanying card delivered a single, clipped directive. "Wear this in the morning. No blazer." By sunrise, the bathroom mirror was reflecting someone halfway between two people. The tailored slacks and polished brogues hadn't budged, but the pale lilac fabric shifted everything else around them. The color warmed the complexion staring back, smoothing out the severe angles that had always made the face look slightly carved from stone. Switching up the look, a paralegal asked in passing. "Just playing around a little?" The answer came out easily. By Friday, nobody was glancing twice. The blouse had quietly slid into the daily backdrop of the office. After that, the packages got harder to brush off. A slim navy pencil skirt, glossy black patent heels. Each one arrived paired with another tightening turn of the screw. Photographs. Frozen video frames. Proof. The kind of evidence designed to take down an entire career in a single afternoon. Then Monday came around again, heavy with that strange sense of something inevitable. The reflection in the mirror that morning looked almost like a stranger. The skirt landed just below the knee. The lilac blouse sat tucked in neatly. The heels added a few uncertain inches of altitude. Even the chestnut hair, once cropped short for the sake of professional efficiency, suddenly looked wrong somehow. Out of step. Out of date. Longer cuts came drifting through her mind. Softer ones. Different ones entirely. "Looking sharp today," the lobby guard said automatically, before his expression flickered into something briefly puzzled. "I mean very polished." The conference room turned out to be more uncomfortable still. Or maybe just more illuminating. Colleagues began to notice things that had never registered before. The way one leg crossed over the other. The shape of carefully filed nails. the clipped percussion of heels striking the marble corridor outside. And underneath the nerves, beneath the embarrassment and the dread, something else began surfacing. Something far more dangerous. The role was beginning to feel less like a costume. Your liability breakdown was honestly fantastic, a young associate said after the meeting wrapped, gathering up her notebooks. Then, with a small smile, and for what it's worth, you look incredible today. The compliment should have stung, should have humiliated. Instead, something unexpected lit up underneath the ribs. A flicker of quiet pride. The feeling stayed there long after the room emptied out. And week by week, the deliveries kept coming. They arrived with the regularity of clockwork. The crisp office blouses and conservative skirts slowly gave way to softer cocktail dresses, fine cashmere cardigans, and accessories selected with someone else's careful taste. Small jewelry boxes started appearing without warning, each one a new fragment of a life she could not remember choosing. Silver hoops, strands of pearls, slim, delicate bracelets. Eventually, even cosmetics, paired as always with neatly handwritten instructions in that same violet ink. Every morning turned into a small private ritual. Standing at the mirror, studying what had shifted, trying to map exactly where the old self ended and the new one began. Then another card arrived. Thursday. Appointment booked. Be there. The address belonged to a private wellness clinic. Inside, the reception area was softly lit, calm in a way that felt deliberate. Lavender drifted out from a candle on the side table. Instrumental piano played gently from hidden speakers. The whole atmosphere had been engineered to ease nerves. The physician didn't appear remotely surprised to see her. She flipped through a small stack of paperwork, then folded her hands neatly on the desk. Everything looks good. For now. For now. We'll take this slowly. These things take time. The reply somehow felt heavier than its words. A small prescription bottle was placed on the desk between them, unassuming, modest in size, quietly enormous in meaning. The first capsule looked like nothing. Swallowing it felt like nothing else, like stepping across a doorway that only opened in one direction. Weeks stretched into months. Months stretched into a year. The transformation didn't arrive in dramatic moments. It arrived in countless quiet adjustments. Skin grew softer. Features rounded. The hard architecture that had once defined the face in the mirror eased into something gentler. Even her voice settled into a softer register. Without quite noticing, she started sitting differently, walking differently, gesturing differently. The old patterns fell away. One afternoon, she caught herself hesitating outside the door of the men's restroom. The realization landed hard and fast. That door no longer belonged to her. The women's restroom, intimidating only a year earlier, now felt straightforwardly correct. Not long after that, Human Resources requested a brief sit-down. The conversation was short. "We'll need to refresh a few records," the HR rep said with a warm, professional smile. "What name would you like us to use from here on out?" The answer was already waiting, like it had been sitting just under the surface for a very long time. Reese. The HR rep tapped at her keyboard. Reese. 2 E's. Yes. A few more keystrokes followed. And pronouns. Only the briefest pause. She, her. Hearing the words said out loud felt strange. Not wrong. Just unfamiliar. Like running across the melody of a song she somehow already knew by heart. The internal announcement circulated the following week. Nothing dramatic happened. No confrontations. No scandal. No whispered outrage in the hallway. Coworkers adjusted. Email signatures updated. Business cards got reprinted. Meetings continued. The legal work didn't slow for a second. Only now, everyone called her Reese. A short while later, the legal paperwork arrived ready to sign. The bulk of it had already been quietly prepared in the background. Court fees paid, forms filed, the highlighted lines waiting. The hearing itself was over in barely 10 minutes. The judge skimmed the file, signed where required, and looked up with a polite, friendly nod. Petition granted. Congratulations, Ms. Atherton. Ms. Atherton. The name landed with a sense of permanence. A clean horizon line, separating then from now. Life beyond the office reshaped itself in step. The dark suits slowly thinned out of the closet, replaced piece by piece. In their place came richer fabrics in deeper colors. Emerald sheath dresses, tailored pencil skirts, silk blouses in soft jewel tones. Rows of heels lined up with quiet precision. The bathroom counters filled with products she now reached for without a second thought. Curling wand, perfumes, serums, a small lineup of cosmetics. Items that once felt foreign, now felt completely routine. Her chestnut hair eventually grew past her shoulders, framing a face that had grown noticeably softer with time. The compliments started arriving more often. "You've been glowing lately." Clients said it. Coworkers said it. Strangers said it. One afternoon at a working lunch, a longtime client paused mid-sentence and smiled across the table. "Whatever you changed, it works on you." For the first time, she actually believed it. That morning, the mirror had shown her confidence instead of doubt. The deep emerald dress fit like it had been stitched onto her. The heels no longer felt like stilts. Makeup no longer required mental effort. The woman in the reflection looked at home in her own skin. Her career bloomed alongside the changes. Clients trusted her almost on contact. Associates respected her opinions. Partners began routing major calls through her judgment. Big accounts closed earlier than expected. Promotion stacked. Recognition kept arriving. During an annual review, one of the senior partners leaned forward thoughtfully. "We'd like you to take point on several of our new initiatives." Reese raised an eyebrow. "Why me?" "Because people actually listen to you." The answer sounded honest. Months earlier, she would have argued with it. Now she only nodded. The anonymous letters had stopped showing up long ago. No more boxes. No more instructions. No more threats. Whoever had set the entire transformation in motion had simply disappeared without ever announcing it. Maybe the project was finished. Maybe there had never been a grand finale planned at all, only the creation of a brand new person. A new identity. A new reputation. A new horizon. Over time, fear slid into familiarity. Familiarity slid into comfort. Comfort slid into belonging. One evening, while she was wrapping up contract revisions at her desk, her phone lit up with a message. "Drinks tonight? Usual spot?" A small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Absolutely. She already knew exactly what she was going to wear. The burgundy wrap dress. The one that made her feel like nothing on earth could touch her. Minutes later, heels clicked confidently through the parking garage as she walked toward her car. The engine turned over with a low, satisfying purr. The registration on the dashboard matched the name on her driver's license, the same name on her office door, the same name on every contract, deed, and document she owned. Reese Atherton. And for the first time in a long, long time, the name felt entirely her own. Soft indie pop drifted out of the car speakers as Reese threaded through glowing downtown streets toward home. The song was an old favorite, one she hadn't listened to in years. Once upon a time, it would have stirred up memories of a different life, a different name, a different version of the person now driving. Tonight, those memories felt fuzzy and distant, like a film someone else had described to her. By the time she pulled into her parking spot, even that faint ache had dissolved. Later that evening, she stood in front of the bedroom mirror, studying herself. The burgundy dress draped along her shape with quiet confidence. Loose chestnut waves spilled across her shoulders, glowing in the warm light of the bedside lamp. Confidence rolled off of every gesture, the steady, settled kind that only comes from time. There had been a stretch, early on, when she'd scanned the mirror looking for echoes of the man she used to be. These days, she rarely thought to look. The leftover traces had shrunk into something small and irrelevant next to the accomplished attorney standing in front of her. The reflection finally felt familiar. A sharp chime cut through the apartment. The doorbell. Reese glanced at the clock. Nearly 9. She set down her wine glass, walked to the entry, and checked the peephole. A courier stood patiently outside with a small box in his arms. Odd. She wasn't expecting anything. "Delivery for Reese Atherton," he said when she opened the door. She accepted the package, thanked him, and stepped back inside. The box was almost weightless. Inside it, a slim black velvet case and a folded card. Her pulse picked up slightly as she unfolded the note. The handwriting was unmistakable. You became everything I knew you could be. The photos are gone. The recordings are destroyed. No more notes. No more pressure. Go live your life. That was the end of it. No signature. No further explanation. No answers. Only closure. Slowly, Reese opened the velvet case. Inside rested a slender silver chain. The pendant at the end was shaped like a small set of balanced scales. Justice. Quiet. Elegant. Meaningful. She clasped it around her neck and crossed the hallway to the larger mirror near the door. For a few long seconds, she simply looked. The woman reflected back, looked whole. Gone was the rattled attorney who had opened that first mysterious envelope with trembling hands and a heart kicking against her ribs. Gone was the uncertainty. Gone was the constant low hum of fear. In her place stood a steady, accomplished professional whose life finally, undeniably, fit her. The pendant rested neatly along her collarbone, like a final piece sliding into place. The transformation no longer felt like something handed down to her. Somewhere along the road, it had quietly become something she had chosen, maybe even welcomed. Monday arrived clear and bright. Reese pulled a tailored plum pantsuit from her closet and paired it with a cream silk camisole. The combination landed exactly where she wanted it, authority and elegance in equal measure. The morning routine flowed easily. Skincare, hair, makeup. Tasks that had once required full concentration now happened almost on autopilot. Years of repetition had ground effort into habit. Morning, Reese. The familiar greeting came from Marcus at the front security desk. Morning, Marcus. She smiled as she crossed the marble lobby. Moments later, the elevator doors slid open onto the executive floor. Outside her office, polished brass lettering caught the overhead lights. Reese Atherton, Senior Counsel. She paused there briefly. The skyline beyond the windows looked exactly the way it always had. Her entire life, though, had reshaped itself around her. A soft knock came shortly afterward. Your 9 o'clock is here, her assistant said. Pemberton Industries. Perfect. Send them in. The meeting flowed without a single rough spot. Reese steered the negotiation with calm, precise instincts, catching weak phrasing in the draft contract and resolving concerns before they had a chance to bloom into objections. Experience came through in every answer, every suggestion, every measured pause. By the close of the presentation, the clients looked plainly impressed. One of the executives shook her hand on the way out with an appreciative smile. Outstanding work, Ms. Atherton. Thank you. We're looking forward to a long partnership. The compliment landed cleanly, not because of how she looked, not because of who she'd become, because she was extraordinarily good at the work itself. An hour later, she walked into an exclusive lunch club in the heart of downtown. The hostess recognized her on sight. Welcome back, Ms. Atherton. Your usual table is ready. Reese nodded politely and followed her through the dining room. On the way, she caught a quick glimpse of herself in one of the mirrored panels along the wall. She paused for half a beat, not out of doubt, not out of confusion, just out of quiet appreciation. Because for the first time in a long time, the woman looking back matched the person she had become. Welcome back, Ms. Atherton. The maitre d' greeted her instantly as she stepped into the private dining room. Reese offered a small smile and was escorted to her preferred table beside the floor-to-ceiling windows. Afternoon sunlight poured across crisp, white linen while the city's skyline shimmered beyond the glass. Lunch was quiet, a green salad, a glass of chilled Sauvignon Blanc, and a small stack of contracts waiting for redline review. As she worked, she noticed the occasional curious glance from neighboring tables. Not invasive. Just the natural kind of attention people pay to anyone who looks completely at ease in their own presence. She barely registered them anymore. A familiar voice broke into her concentration. Reese? She looked up. Standing beside her table was Daniel Hargrove. Law school. Mock trials. Long, caffeine-soaked study sessions in the campus library. Recognition arrived in a flash. Daniel blinked twice before a slow, genuine smile spread across his face.
Wow.
It really is you. Hello, Daniel. A brief flicker of uncertainty crossed his expression, quickly smoothed away by something kinder. I heard you joined Brennan and Cole. I just wasn't expecting. His sentence trailed off. Reese rescued him with an amused smile. Life takes interesting turns. Daniel laughed. That's putting it diplomatically. The awkwardness dissolved within seconds. They spent the next several minutes catching up on classmates, professors, and the scattered legal careers that had carried their graduating class to every corner of the country. To Reese's surprise, Daniel never pushed for an explanation. He simply accepted the person sitting across from him. Eventually, he glanced at his watch and stood. Good to see you, Reese. You too. After he left, she turned her attention back to her contracts, as though the interruption had been nothing more than another ordinary moment of an ordinary day. The afternoon dissolved into a blur of conference calls and back-to-back client meetings, depositions, negotiations, strategy sessions. Each task flowed seamlessly into the next. She moved through the office with the practiced confidence of someone who had earned every square inch of her place there. Heels tapped a steady rhythm across the polished stone floors. The small silver scales of justice pen caught the light from time to time as she turned her head in conversation. A few associates stopped by for guidance. Partners pinged her for updates. Clients called with last-minute questions. By evening, another successful day stood neatly behind her. One of the senior partners paused outside her open door. Excellent work on Pemberton. Reese glanced up from her desk. Thank you. That deal might be one of our biggest accounts this year. The compliment stayed with her long after he'd walked away. Not because it puffed up her ego, because every accomplishment felt like a quiet confirmation that her life was fully and unmistakably her own. Whatever strange road had carried her here, she had built something meaningful out of it. Beyond the windows, the sky was sliding into ribbons of amber and violet. Reese gathered her things, leather tote, portfolio stuffed with documents, phone, and stepped into the elevator. The woman reflected in the mirrored walls looked composed and certain. No longer pretending. No longer adapting. Just her. Back at the apartment, the day's intensity quietly faded. The tailored suit gave way to soft charcoal leggings and an oversized cream sweater. Bare feet padded across warm hardwood floors. The apartment greeted her like an old friend. Occasionally, she still paused in front of her closet. Not out of hesitation. Out of appreciation. Rows of dresses, blouses, sweaters, and tailored jackets filled the space with quiet order. Nothing in there remained from the wardrobe she had once owned. The apartment itself had shifted alongside her. Gone were the days of cluttered countertops and rushed takeout containers. Everything now felt intentional. Fresh herbs lined the kitchen windowsill. Candles rested on polished shelves. Music drifted through hidden speakers in the corners of the ceiling. That evening she made lemon spaghetti with basil and shaved Parmesan. Simple. Comforting. Quietly elegant. After dinner, she settled onto the couch with a stack of legal briefs. Case files spread across the coffee table. Highlighters and sticky notes shared space with a small vase of fresh tulips and decorative throw pillows. Years earlier, she wouldn't have given a passing thought to lighting or textures or atmosphere. Now they mattered, not because they defined her, but because they reflected her. Her phone buzzed on cue. Hi, Mom. The conversation slid into place easily. There had been a stretch of time when these calls had felt complicated. Every sentence carefully measured. Every word navigating new territory. That uneasiness had vanished long ago. How was your day, sweetheart? Busy, as usual. Reese smiled into the phone. Big hearing tomorrow. You work too hard. Her mother's voice carried that warm, familiar affection. A short pause followed. Are you making time for yourself, at least? Reese laughed softly. I'm trying. And meeting anyone interesting? Not lately. Her mother chuckled knowingly. Well, when the right person finally shows up, they'll be very lucky. The words settled gently between them. Then came something that landed even deeper. "You've turned into such an extraordinary woman, Reese." For a long moment, she didn't answer. The sincerity in her mother's voice still managed to take her by surprise. Not obligation, not tolerance, just love. Plain and unconditional. After the call ended, Reese sat in stillness for a few seconds. The apartment felt peaceful around her. Outside, the city's skyline glowed against the night. Inside, she let herself reflect on how far things had traveled. Then she smiled, opened the next case file, and got back to work. Tomorrow's arguments still needed shaping. Deadlines still existed. Clients still depended on her. Beneath every change life had handed her, one thing had never moved an inch. Reese Atherton was still a phenomenal attorney. And tomorrow, she fully intended to prove it again. In many ways, she felt sharper now than she ever had. The low, constant tension that had once hummed beneath every thought had faded into something steadier, a quiet certainty that made even the most demanding days feel manageable. Near midnight, her evening routine unfolded with the same easy precision. The bathroom counter carried a small, orderly arsenal of products gathered over time. Cleansers, serums, moisturizers, perfumes, all arranged beneath warm overhead lighting. Warm water rinsed away the day. Rose toner, moisturizer, eye cream. A handful of small repeating steps long since woven into second nature. Months earlier, the routine had felt foreign. Now it felt safe, predictable, calming. Standing before the vanity mirror, Reese drew a brush through her chestnut hair until it gleamed under the soft lights. Satisfied, she gathered it loosely behind her head with a silk ribbon. The lavender nightgown felt cool against her skin. Tomorrow's outfit waited nearby. A tailored navy dress, polished black pumps, and matching accessories laid out next to them. Another day of client meetings, courtroom prep, negotiations, and deadlines hovered just on the horizon. She welcomed it. Whatever uncertainty had once tagged along with her transformation had long since burned away. The anonymous notes were gone. The boxes had stopped arriving. The fear had thinned out into memory. And yet the life that had grown out of all of it continued to bloom, threaded into every part of her daily existence. In the mirror, she saw no division, no contradiction, only herself. Reese Atherton, attorney, rising partner, confident professional. The woman gazing back at her looked entirely at home in her own life. Moments later, she switched off the lamp and slipped beneath lavender-scented blankets. Outside, distant city lights flickered beyond the gauzy curtains. Far below, the muted hum of traffic carried on. Sleep arrived quickly, and with it came dreams. Dreams of boardrooms and courtrooms, of standing in front of juries and laying out arguments with quiet authority, of walking confidently through rooms where every pair of eyes tracked her words. The future no longer felt uncertain. It felt wide open, brightly lit, full of possibilities she once would have dismissed without a second thought. Morning arrived in soft sheets of gold. Sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains and spilled across the bedroom floor. Reese stretched lazily before climbing out of bed and padding toward the bathroom. The reflection that met her there looked completely familiar. Sleep-tangled chestnut hair, soft eyes, a face still warming up to the morning. There was nothing unusual about any of it. This was simply her life now. The navy dress fit perfectly, sculpted to project authority without sacrificing softness. Polished black pumps finished the look. A few extra inches of height. A small additional measure of confidence. The makeup followed naturally. Foundation. Mascara. A whisper of neutral shadow. A soft coral lipstick chosen specifically for long days in court. Each step unfolded almost without thought. Breakfast stayed simple. Sliced fruit, yogurt, a small bowl of granola, orange juice in a crystal glass. Morning vitamins lined up neatly beside her prescription bottles. The television softly delivered headlines while she scanned notes for the day's first consultation. By the time she stepped out of the apartment, she already felt fully prepared. The drive downtown took just under 30 minutes. Even the small details of the commute reflected habits she no longer noticed: seat position, mirror angle, the same favorite playlist. Tiny adjustments that had quietly become part of her. The parking attendant greeted her immediately. "Good morning, Miss Atherton." "Morning, Devon." She smiled as she dropped her keys into his palm. Minutes later, she crossed the lobby. The elevator climbed smoothly toward the executive floor. Marble underfoot reflected the polished overhead lighting. The familiar percussion of heels echoed softly through the long corridor. Once, she might have second-guessed every step, wondered if she belonged here, measured every gesture. There was none of that now. No hesitation. No performance. No self-consciousness. Only familiarity. Only confidence. Only the quiet steadiness of someone moving naturally through a life that had finally become her own. By midday, Reese had already accomplished more than many attorneys would manage in an entire day. Several complicated contracts sat completed in her outbox. 2 overseas conference calls had connected her with clients in Seoul. She had also spent close to an hour earlier that morning mentoring a junior associate prepping for her first major negotiation. Years of experience, stacked on top of sharpened instincts, made the process look almost effortless. The conference room stayed packed through lunch. Folders blanketed the long table. Half-empty coffee cups crowded the edges next to legal briefs. The conversation moved quickly between strategy points and case updates. Dressed in a tailored navy sheath, Reese stood at the whiteboard, sketching out a legal angle that gradually pulled the entire room into silence. When she finished, one of the firm's senior litigators let out a low, impressed whistle. "That is sharp." Several heads nodded around the table. "They won't see that one coming." A faint smile crossed Reese's lips. "That's the point." The afternoon brought depositions. Hours of careful questioning. Calculated answers. Strategic patience. Across the table, opposing counsel kept trying to throw off the rhythm of testimony. Reese never flinched. Every objection landed at exactly the right moment. Every question served a purpose. Every pause carried weight. During a brief recess, the court reporter offered her an appreciative smile. "You're remarkable at this." Reese laughed quietly. "Just a lot of practice." The reply was modest, but the admiration in the room lingered anyway. By early evening, most of the staff had already gone home. The office floor slowly emptied until only a handful of glowing lights remained visible through the glass partitions. Reese kept working. Documents for tomorrow's arbitration hearing fanned out across her desk. The small silver scales of justice pendant against her blouse caught the warm glow of the desk lamp from time to time. A familiar voice cut through the quiet. "Working late again." The security officer stood near the doorway. "Just wrapping a few things up." He shook his head. "Don't stay all night, all right?" Years earlier, that kind of concern would have felt unnecessary. Now it felt simply kind. People no longer treated her as distant or intimidating. They saw someone approachable, dedicated, worth checking in on. Eventually, hunger called the question. Reese saved her work, closed the laptop, and slid the remaining files into a burgundy leather portfolio. The office lights dimmed behind her as she crossed the nearly empty parking structure. The crisp click of her heels echoed through the concrete levels. Dinner waited at a small Italian spot tucked into a quiet neighborhood a few blocks from home. The owner greeted her as she stepped through the door. "Buona sera, Miss Atherton." Her usual table sat ready. No reservation needed. No questions asked. Settling comfortably into her seat, Reese ordered the butternut squash ravioli and a glass of Pinot Grigio. While she ate, she skimmed through tomorrow's schedule. Arbitration hearing. Client meetings. A luncheon with senior partners. Several openings that could nudge the next phase of her career forward. The server refilled her wine and smiled. "Everything all right?" "Couldn't be better." By the time she made it home, the city outside had eased into nighttime. The tailored dress traded itself in for comfortable clothes. The day's makeup melted away under warm water and gentle cleanser. Moisturizers and night creams waited in their usual line along the sink. Standing at the mirror again, Reese brushed out her long chestnut hair until it gleamed under the soft bathroom lights. The familiar ritual carried a quiet, settling effect. Each small habit reinforced the life she was now living. Looking back, it was almost impossible to believe how everything had started. Fear, pressure, humiliation. A plot built specifically to dismantle the person she once thought she was. Somewhere along the way, though, the story had pivoted. The transformation had stopped feeling like something forced upon her. Instead, it had become a road that led her toward a version of herself she had never expected to meet. Later, tucked under a soft duvet, Reese cracked open a legal thriller and propped herself against the headboard. Reading glasses perched lightly on her nose. The apartment remained quiet, save for the occasional purr of traffic outside. Tomorrow promised challenges. Important hearings. Career-shaping conversations. Decisions that could alter the next decade of her professional life. None of it felt overwhelming. She would meet it the way she met everything else now, with composure, with clarity, with absolute certainty about who she was. Eventually, the book slipped from her hands onto the nightstand. The bedside lamp glowed for a few more seconds. Then darkness settled gently around her, and Reese drifted into sleep, ready for whatever tomorrow had in store. The apartment rested in complete silence. Beneath layers of soft blankets, Reese slept peacefully, breathing slow and steady. The figure curled against the pillows looked very little like the person she had once been. Time had reshaped countless small details, smoothing rough edges into softer lines and turning hesitation into self-assurance. And yet the most important pieces had never shifted. The intelligence, the discipline, the relentless drive that had carried her through every obstacle. If anything, those qualities had only grown stronger once she stopped fighting herself. The years that followed moved quickly. Wins stacked up. Reputations expanded. Opportunities multiplied. The arbitration case landed cleanly in her favor, and shortly afterward, another milestone followed. Partnership. The announcement rippled through the firm. Before long, fresh frosted lettering appeared outside a newly renovated corner office. Reese Atherton, partner. Seeing the title etched there never lost its glow. The office itself reflected her climb. A larger conference area. A private meeting space reserved for major clients. Floor-to-ceiling windows opening onto the skyline. Her wardrobe evolved alongside her career. Designer suits hung beside formal gowns reserved for galas, fundraisers, and high-end industry events. The invitations didn't slow down. Industry dinners, charity auctions, networking receptions, award ceremonies. At some point, they stopped feeling like obligations and started feeling like confirmation, proof that she belonged. One evening, during the firm's annual gala, the managing partner approached her with a champagne flute in hand. "You've become one of the most valuable attorneys in this firm." Reese smiled. The compliment felt genuine. Around them, crystal chandeliers bathed the ballroom in warm golden light. Her emerald gown shimmered softly with every motion. Chestnut hair had been swept up into an elegant chignon that revealed pearl drop earrings and the silver scales pendant she still wore nearly every day. Guests drifted gracefully through the room while a small orchestra played from a corner platform. To everyone in the ballroom, Reese looked exactly at home among the senior attorneys, executives, and judges in attendance. She belonged there. "I've had incredible mentors," she replied. The answer earned approving nods. As the evening rolled on, conversations shifted easily between business strategy, recent legal developments, and lighter stories swapped over champagne. Reese moved smoothly from one circle to the next. Years earlier, she would have felt distinctly out of place. Now she navigated rooms like this one with practiced ease. At one point, an attorney from another prestigious firm extended his hand. "May I have this dance?" Reese's smile widened. "Of course." They stepped onto the dance floor. The orchestra slid into a slower piece as they moved beneath the chandeliers. The emerald fabric swayed gently around her legs while polished heels glided smoothly across the parquet. The attorney looked genuinely impressed. "You carry yourself with remarkable confidence." Reese laughed lightly. "Years of practice." "I mean it," he said. "Your firm is lucky to have you." The compliment stayed with her. Not because she needed validation, because she knew exactly how much work had gone into earning every milestone, every promotion, every closed case. Every hard-won victory. Nothing had been handed to her. The circumstances that had reshaped her life may have been extraordinary, but the success itself belonged entirely to her. If anything, the challenges along the way had sharpened her, made her more adaptable, more focused, more resilient. The gala stretched late into the night. Awards were presented. Speeches were made. Champagne glasses lifted in celebration. When Reese accepted recognition for closing one of the firm's largest mergers of the year, the applause felt sincere. No whispers. No curiosity. No second-glance questions. To nearly everyone in attendance, Reese Atherton had always been exactly who she appeared to be. An accomplished attorney. A respected partner. A rising leader in the legal community. Driving home later that night, she finally let herself exhale. The city glowed beneath the soft glitter of winter lights. A few loose strands of hair had escaped her updo. Her feet ached slightly despite the comfortable heels. Small inconveniences. Tiny souvenirs from a busy, successful evening. The satisfaction underneath them stayed much longer. Another milestone. Another quiet reminder of how far she had traveled. Back at the apartment, the familiar rhythms took over. The emerald gown returned carefully to its place in the wardrobe. Pearl earrings settled back into their velvet case. The silver pendant followed shortly after. One by one, hairpins slipped free. Chestnut waves spilled naturally across her shoulders. Standing at the bathroom mirror in a pale silk robe, Reese studied her reflection. The tiredness was visible. So was the contentment. She looked lighter somehow, less burdened, more at peace than she could ever remember being. Tomorrow was Saturday. No hearings. No depositions. No marathon negotiations. Maybe she would meet friends for brunch, browse a couple of boutiques, possibly spend an hour reviewing a case file before Monday rolled in. Nothing urgent. Nothing demanding. For once, the weekend belonged entirely to her. As she got ready for bed, a distant memory drifted up. The woman who had started all of it. The ex whose elaborate scheme had been crafted to demolish her life. She had vanished years ago. No explanation. No follow-up. Only silence. Reese doubted they would ever meet again. What entertained her most was the irony of the whole thing. The revenge had failed completely. The person meant to be broken had never actually been broken. Somewhere between fear and acceptance, between uncertainty and confidence, between resistance and growth, something unexpected had happened. The life designed to be a cage had transformed into a future. And the person meant to be ruined had walked out the other side stronger than ever. Reese flicked off the bathroom light and moved through the apartment in comfortable quiet. The soft fabric of her robe brushed against her skin as she crossed the hallway. Around her, every detail reflected the life she had built over the years. Warm lighting, carefully chosen furniture, shelves lined with books and framed photographs. The subtle whisper of perfume still drifting through the air. There had been a time when none of it had felt like hers. In the very beginning, every change had arrived through someone else's instructions, someone else's demands, someone else's grip. Somewhere along the way, though, that had shifted. The choices became hers. The life became hers. The identity became hers. By the time she slipped into the bedroom, there was no longer any space between the person she had become and the person she saw herself as. The bed welcomed her with its usual quiet comfort. Cool sheets. Soft pillows. A sense of peace that had once seemed almost impossible. Tomorrow would bring another busy day. More meetings. More responsibilities. More moments calling for confidence, professionalism, and composure. None of those things felt like a performance anymore. They were simply part of who she was. Reese Atherton, attorney, partner, respected professional. A woman whose life had been shaped by extraordinary circumstances, but defined by her own resolve. Settling beneath the blankets, she let her thoughts drift. Sleep arrived quickly. Dreams followed. In them, she stood in front of judges and juries, delivering arguments with effortless authority. She sat across from executives whose attention rested entirely on her recommendations. She walked confidently into a future filled with opportunities she had earned through years of effort and perseverance. There was no fear left in those dreams. Only possibility. The person who had once opened that first anonymous parcel could never have pictured a future like this one. Back then, every step forward had felt terrifying. Every change had felt like loss. Now those same pathways looked entirely different. Not endings, beginnings. Outside, the city kept moving beneath a wide blanket of distant lights. Inside, the apartment stayed quiet. Morning would eventually arrive with its familiar rituals. The coffee brewing in the kitchen. Another carefully chosen outfit pulled from the wardrobe. The rhythm of heels across polished floors. Another day waiting to be lived. For now, none of that mattered. Reese rested peacefully under the blankets, chestnut hair fanned across the pillow, breath slow and steady in the dark. The journey that had once seemed impossible was no longer a journey at all. It was simply her life. And in spite of the difficult road that had led her here, she had stumbled across something unexpected along the way. Strength, confidence, belonging. What had begun as an attempt to break her had, in the end, revealed who she was capable of becoming. And as sleep drew her deeper into the night, one truth stood clear above everything else. She was no longer surviving her life. She was living it, fully, confidently, and entirely on her own terms.